So I've been an early childhood educator for almost 15 years. I've taught in Head Start, so pre-K all the way to fourth grade. I'm currently teaching kindergarten in Washington, D.C. This is my first experience in the public school sector, and I'm really excited about it so far. It's really important, I guess, not to believe what people say, right? Because they're not always accurate. I've been having just the best experience within DC public schools. However, as I mentioned before, I started my career off in Head Start in East Orange, New Jersey. I moved from there to being the early childhood director of a preschool program in Lower Manhattan in Chelsea. I realized that I wanted to expand my experience beyond preschool and became a founding kindergarten teacher at Harlem Village Academies, where I spent 8 years there in a teaching capacity as an instructional coach, as a co-principal, and then later a professor for the graduate school program that they have there. And my degrees span from psychology, educational psychology, and most recently, I received a second master's in special education for students in grades 1st through 6th grade. So that's just a little bit about me professionally. And I'll share a little bit about my experience. I definitely resonate with Babysitter's Club and Miss Mimi. I remember being so tired of Macbeth and Beowulf. When I got to Howard, I was like, no more of this quote unquote classic, whatever that means. Anyway, but I would say that I would consider myself an avid reader. I do book reviews. I have a book review due on Monday for Corwin Publishing, so I do academic reading. But my favorite is historical fiction. Like, I just love being taken away in like this factualized world that we can't go back to. I will share some memories myself. Like, I remember being, in kindergarten, 1st grade, like browsing through the easy reader section, like in that little corner in the class, and just not being interested. Like, the book smelled funny. Like, I didn't want to read those. And I also remember being I think I was in a 6th grade. And so Miss Mimi, you might connect to this, but I was like running through the Anne of Green Gables books. And although Anne of Green Gables is not like me, her story is that she was had a hard life because of her red hair. And I felt like I could connect to her being picked on and standing out. In that summer, going into 6th grade, I think I read all 8 of those books. And I just remember feeling so proud of myself because I chose those books. I finished them all. And I kind of turned my friendships with different girls that I knew into like a book club, not because I really wanted them to be in my book club, but I just wanted to keep reading. So it was like, if you're going to hang out, like, you got to have a book too. I even remember one of my friends, like, their parents thanking my parents, like, we're so happy, like, so-and-so spends time with Melissa. And I was like, I just remember that moment, like, because of the compliment, but also just being excited that I had finished, my first series set of books. And so I start us off with this because right now your children are figuring out who they are as readers, and hopefully having beautiful moments like the one you shared, Danielle, of being really excited to get new books, to care for their books, to talk about them. So let me tell you a little bit about the book club now. And for starters, I'll tell you what guided reading is. So both of you having 8-year-olds, I think both of you said you have 8-year-olds. I might be wrong, but one 8-year-old?
9.
9, yeah. Okay, close, like 3rd grade-ish.
Yeah, 4th grade. Mm-hmm.
So guided reading should be something that you both already know about, right? Because your child's school, if they're in a school, should be offering it. Guided reading is just an instructional approach that involves a teacher working with a small group of students who demonstrate similar reading behaviors and can read at similar levels. It's really just a structure. In most schools, for a student who's typically developing, they would probably say that your child would get about 15 minutes of guided reading 3 days a week. For students who have greater struggles, they might get guided reading 5 times a week. One of the trickiest things that happens as our kiddos move from reading simple readers or just one book without chapters to chapter books is we, the adults, get so excited. We're like, they're reading chapter books, that we like often don't give them enough time in school to really talk about what it is that they're reading. And so we're really excited that in this program, we'll be able to offer 30 to 45-minute sessions so that the students can really like talk about what it is that they've read. But here are some of the things students gain from being part of a guided reading group. So obviously we'll be working on reading comprehension. Additionally, speaking and listening skills are really like important, as we'll be discussing the books in great detail. So being able to build on to what a peer has said is going to be really important, or if maybe they're disagreeing. Additionally, like I said before, we'll be building discussion norms. I've shared with the other groups that we've met, one of my favorite parts in our sessions is where I kind of back up as the facilitator and really allow the students to lead their own conversation, and to really push one another to answer, to think about who's been answering the questions first, who's been shying away from sharing anything, really to like push one another in our space. Additionally, I'm going to be sharing some graphic organizers, really simple ones that hopefully will benefit your child, not just in our book club, but obviously as they are a reader and in school. So simple things that they could really just turn a piece of scrap paper into the same type of graphic organizer we'll be using. So we use Venn diagrams. Sometimes I'll have them do something called a KWL. What do you know? What do you want to know? And what did you learn from the text that you just read? Additionally, and I think this is also one of the things that's often missed as our children move into like reading longer books, is vocabulary skills. I think often we see a child pick up a book and they like speed through it. We know that there are words in there that they don't know what they are, how to say it, but yet they've finished the book. And so every week I'll be sharing out some vocabulary that we're working on, and I'll ask the students to really think about if they've heard these words before, if they understand them, and they'll engage in a conversation almost thinking of like the roots of different words and using what they know and see in the word, along with the context clues that are in like surrounding that word to figure it out. And most importantly, I want them to love reading. I know you guys want them to love reading as well. And so this experience is meant to be really joyful. Hold on as I attempt to turn the page. It always goes after I want it to go. Okay. So what I have here on the screen for you are just two samples of one is complete and one is a task that I had students do this summer. We were reading The One and Only Ivan and Crenshaw by Catherine Applegate, who is a white author, but she does write some really beautiful stories about animals for the most part. And oh, I forgot to say, one of my favorite things is to read books before they come out as a movie. Or if they did come out as a movie, I make sure I read the book. So we were reading The One and Only Ivan before it came out. And what I asked the students to do amongst themselves, I was just the recorder, was to think about how the two human characters in the story were similar and different. And so the notes that you'll see on this Venn diagram are the children's words. They said that Mac was irresponsible, greedy, jealous of wealthy people, has a bad temper, whereas George, who's the janitor in the story and Mac owns the like quote unquote zoo, is kind, he's flexible, always willing to help, takes good care of the animals, and really comfortable being around the animals because the animals trust him. Additionally, below you'll see a sample of some of the vocabulary words that we worked on in the group. So words like tactful, amends, dignified, contemplating, surly. Some of these words are like proper like SAT words. So it was really fun listening to the students like tact, like in just like trying to break down like pieces of the words or think about where they might have heard it before. As they worked together, for the most part, they were able to uncover the meanings of these words. So they would tell me what they thought the word meant, and we'd do like a little matching game. I also have a recording I'm going to play for you in just a moment, if my computer will cooperate. Just so you can hear the beginning of one of our sessions, I want you to just hear the joy of these students. I only recorded sessions if I knew someone was going to be absent so that they could watch the session later. So I'm just going to play a little bit of the audio And I'll explain what you're listening to in a moment. So I'm going to start recording. But what is your opinion of gorillas? Oh, sorry. I wanted to play from the beginning. Hold on. Second. Okay. All right. Now we're recording. You made it to the zoo. There you go.
The gorillas are right in front of him.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, guys, since we started late, let's jump into it. Here's my starter question for you guys. In what ways are Jackson from Crenshaw and Julia from the one and only Ivan similar? Do you think that they would be friends in real life? Go ahead, Romare.
I think they would because they're both really interested in animals.
Mm-hmm. In what ways are they similar? In addition to that.
They're similar because
I'll pause it right there. My key point is you heard like the excitement at the start of our session, you can't make that stuff up. My hope is that all the students that I work with feel that way about the books that they're reading. And as you heard, we were reading 2 different books during that session over the course of 5 weeks. And we were able to do some comparison across books, which is a lot of fun too, especially for anybody who loves a series or loves a certain author, just being able to make those types of comparisons. So for the book club, this is kind of how it'll operate, but students will read the majority of the book or the books that we read on their own time. So we're not going to be coming together to like actually read. They're going to be reading on their own. And for all of the adults in their life, I'm going to need your help because obviously 2 weeks, when I tell that to the typical 3rd or 4th grader, they're like, no, I could finish that much faster. So I might need your help, like snatching the book back from them when they've hit their chapter, where they need to stop so they don't continue on. And I think when you hear like the joy in that child's voice that we just heard, like he stopped where he was asked to stop, right? And that's a key part in just keeping the momentum going. I also think it's really important to like help students understand the importance of pacing themselves, because I think sometimes we accidentally are rewarding the wrong thing. It's not about how fast you finish the book, it's what you take away from the story. So we'll start off by recapping the pages that we've read. So it's clear that the boys on that call like knew exactly what happened. Like they were all on the same page based on their excitement. They were looking forward to what was going to be happening next. Then we'll engage in some critical thinking questions. And one of the biggest things that has been a push for young children right now, I don't feel like it was as much of a push when I was in school, like in elementary and middle and high school, but is using evidence from the text to support your ideas. And I think that push is happening more and more with like younger and younger children in the educational sector. And I think it's such an interesting time in this like COVID, Donald Trump world that we're living in. It's really important that students are able to like fact check for themselves, to present evidence for their idea instead of waiting for somebody else to do that checking for them. So that's a really powerful tool. The students will be expected to come to book club with their book. And because it's theirs, like I'm okay, you have to, set whatever norms for your family. I'd encourage them to put Post-its, or if they want to write in the book, I want them to like really mark what it is that they found so they can talk and speak eloquently about what it is that they've read. We'll also, like I said before, use different organizers to compare and contrast and to explore the meanings of unfamiliar words. I really love creating a space where students feel safe enough to say, I don't know something. And I think it's really wonderful to watch that unfold in the group that you heard. They were also in different places in the world. Some of them were in Washington, D.C., others were in Virginia. So really building community, even though we're in this virtual space. So the books that we'll be reading for the 5 weeks that will be coming up soon, for the 2nd to 4th grade group, they'll be reading the Sophie Washington series by Tanya Duncan Ellis. I have not met her personally, but I know Jennifer has talked with her and met her, I believe. And so we'll be exploring 2 books from that series. And for the fourth to sixth grade group, we'll be reading the Track series by Jason Reynolds. I can speak for anybody who's into like young adult literature. Jason Reynolds is certainly making like quite a dent, as both of these are Black authors. He's really making a dent. I think you had mentioned, Candace, like short essays. He's done books of poetry, short essays, and he has this Track series as well. So the 2 of them are really trying to create a space, and I think almost all of us just now spoke to the fact that a lot of the books we read as children did not reflect who we are. And it's still a big challenge. Like as Jennifer and I were looking and trying to find titles, there are a lot of books that appear like they might be written by a person of color, and they're not. Or it's like really hard to find a picture of the author. So it's still very much a challenge. I'm not giving up, but I know that to be a Black educator in America in a way at times feels like a sacrifice, because you're foregoing Wall Street funds or like the big salary. So I don't know what the hope is for Black authors, but I know it is really challenging for us to find quality books spanning beyond just like a children's like picture book, but really in that chapter book space for our older students. So that's what's going to be happening in the book club. We're really excited to be offering this to you. I'll be hosting short check-ins with all of the families before we begin class. Given like my experience with teaching students how to read, I'm not trying to like toot my horn, but like in talking with you and finding out what your child has been reading, and like if you were to have their report card handy, I can get a sense of what their reading level might be to give you some advice on where they would go. So I'd say the difference between the Jason Reynolds book versus the Sophie Washington, if you were just to like go on Amazon and look, you too probably would be able to assess like, like this looks like more of what my child is reading versus the Jason Reynolds, which looks like a proper like young adult series, like middle school age chapter book. So that's how I'll be just like determining where students should go. But if you'd like to go ahead and look at both books and do one of those quick like glances that Amazon offers where you can look into the book, you might also be able to kind of decide where your student should go. But it won't be any type of assessment. I'll be asking like, where did they end the year at, like last year, so I can just give you some feedback on where they should go. Because as I mentioned, we won't be spending a ton of time reading in the group. So I want to make sure that all of the students have adequate access to the book so they're not struggling to keep up with the discussion in the book.